Hello and welcome to IBM TV. Today I'm joined by Steve Miller-Jones, Senior Director of Product Management at Limelight Networks. Steve, welcome to IBM TV.
Thanks very much, good morning.
Can you tell us about, when preparing a live video event, what are
Sure.
some of the best practices to consider ahead of time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there are always lots of things to consider about live streaming. You know, there's the event itself that you're capturing, the streaming, or if you're in charge of the cameras, or leading up to the production of that event. So there are a lot of pieces there, but sort of let's focus sort of post-production onwards. You know, you've got a kind of workflow which has got video coming out of a production suite. You've got to encode it and get it distributed online. So you've got a number of steps in the process. Do you know what's going to happen between the production unit and where the broadcast devices? Do you have some kind of satellite uplink? Do you have an encoder on site? Are you encoding off site? So you want to test all those paths, make sure you have some redundancy in place. You probably want to run some kind of dry run process before the event so that you know if things fail over that you've got some redundancy. And then you need to look further out into your pathway of thinking about how am I going to produce the right formats for the right devices? Do I have a workflow in place to do that? Do I need to do captioning? Do I need to put any overlay or bugs on the screen? Do I have additional commentary to add? So you've got all of those kind of steps before the video is even going to get to anyone that you want to work through in a straightforward project plan. And then, of course, doing a dry run with your monitoring team. Can you see all aspects of the end-to-end stream? Do you know that you're in control if something goes wrong? Do you have methods of procedure? Do you have a bridge that you're on where everyone's talking about and can solve problems actively on the fly? And yeah, knowing you've got some kind of high availability service in place, so if one thing fails, there is, it's not a single point of failure.
Yeah.
So there are lots of ways of looking at it, but I think if you treat it as a project, look at it end to end, and look for spots of single points of failure, I think you'll be onto a good plan.
Okay. And what are the most popular formats that have to be supported to reach audience viewing devices?
So today it's really beginning to trim down a lot. I suppose a couple of years ago you'd have said there would be traditionally RTMP, there might be some straggling RTSP going on, and then you'd have some smooth streaming, some flash-based streaming, and the HLS would be prominent as well. Whereas today I think we're getting to a situation where certainly in the US and in Europe, HLS and Dash are the preferred formats for distribution. If we look forward at the Common Media Application Framework, I think we'll see that Dash and HLS will certainly be the preferred format, and we'll see smooth streaming continue to fall away. RTMP, more and more service providers will end of life their support for it, and I think HDS in the Adobe environment will sort of, with the challenges that the Flash players face in browsers today, I think will fall away as well. So we'll end up certainly with HLS and Dash, and then I think we'll see the emergence of some low latency formats such as WebRTC or variations like that.
Okay. And what are some of the recommendations for bit rates for shooting videos?
That's interesting. So I would, if you're shooting for broadcast TV and you're doing Ultra HD, you've got very, very high bit rates. If you're trying to go for 1080p for your screen ties and it's sort of a full HD experience, and you're going upwards of 4 megabits per second, I think, and then it depends how many different bit rates you want to have. So are you trying to cater for a mobile audience as well as an audience at home? Do you need to have very small bit rates, audio only even, so that you can ensure the continuity of experience as someone maybe drifts between Wi-Fi zones or 4G or in the future 5G aerials. So I think you need the range of bit rates, so you need to probably add them all up, and you could easily get in excess of 20 megabits per second needed to go up.
So if the live event is educational training or gambling, how can we handle the low latency requirements?
So it's a good question. Low latency was traditionally handled with RTMP, and it has been a sort of staple of that. And of course, that technology itself, there's no issue with it, but the distribution of it in the Flash players is sort of now, due to the way the browsers are behaving, and probably rightly so, is seen to be a bit of a security issue. So people don't like using the Flash player anymore. So Dash is a good format for trying to control your chunk size of your streams. And I've seen a few examples of people using smaller chunk sizes to get sort of sub 5-second latency on streams, which I think for education is probably okay. Education, I think the standard Dash stream 10-second chunks is probably still going to serve your latency needs well enough, unless it's some examination or something like that. For the sort of betting and sports and live streaming, I think people are trying to look down at the 3 to 4 second latency and lower, and I think we have to look at Dash as being one methodology of handling that. The challenge is being in how the player deals with the manifests and deals with the framing in the stream, and the players can get quite confused, are you not able to read the chunks quickly enough and read the manifest well. And then of course across the sort of betting world and live streaming, people are looking at the introduction of another UDP format that's less reliable in terms of how it error handles, and so gives a lower latency. So WebSockets or WebRTC streaming is looking to become a popular way of doing that. Many encoding platforms offer WebRTC output, and companies like Limelight are beginning to offer WebRTC services.
Analytics is a really important factor in all of this.
Sure.
How can I gather viewer analytics to better understand the audience's engagement?
Yeah, so there are two sides to that. The first side is obviously your viewers are using a player of some kind, an application environment, a website, a player on a TV. So it depends where the player is and how you've built the player. So if you've built it into an app environment, most app environments allow you to use SDKs that you can plug in that will give you data about streams consumed, rebuffer rates, bit rates consumed, length of viewing time. So all of that sort of user-specific data, you need to be looking there. And then your delivery service provider, so a CDN or a streaming service provider, should be able to give you information about your throughput, your concurrency, your distribution, and you should be able to use that data in combination to give yourself a good understanding of where are my users coming from, and in each of these different regions, is the performance good enough for my metrics, so your KPIs for that stream, and what are they looking at in the player, and are they getting the experience I want them to? So really it's a combination piece, and you need some decent real-time data for live streaming to analyze in real time what's happening. You're probably going to get, for live streaming, you're probably going to be more interested in knowing that you've got your concurrency, how many users are actually connected, and what bit rates you're producing at that time. And are people going up through the bit rates, or are they beginning to drop down? And are they having rebuffering events that means there's some congestion that's interrupting the stream?
So we mentioned the viewer quite a few times here. Can you give us some tips for the best practices for delivering a great viewer experience?
Yeah, so I think the key with viewers is thinking about what device are you targeting when they're going to be consuming your stream, and then targeting your stream experience for those devices. So if you think your users are going to be mobile whilst watching your stream, you probably want to think about the order and your bit rates go, so that they're catering for a mobile audience first. Faster startup, maybe with a lower bit rate, then moving through to higher bit rates as they go. Versus if they're going to be at home or in a sort of entertainment lean back environment, you're more likely to have a consistent connection, so you could very much go in for a high bit rate first, followed by even the higher one, but you're getting that high experience at the first step. So I think you really need to think about where your stream's going to be consumed, and then you cater how your stream's delivered for those individual cases.
So as the technology changes, the consumption changes, security becomes quite a big issue. So how can we protect the video streams from theft and defend the origin website from attacks?
Yeah, it's obviously an area of concern. There are, if you follow the industry news, not a week goes by without someone having some data either revealed that they had some breach of some kind. I think there are really three pillars of security. I think there's the delivery of the traffic itself, there's the protection of the content, and there's the application and user data. So, on delivering the content, straightforward encryption. People used to use flash encryption. Streaming over HTTPS will encrypt the data as it flows to the end user, of course, that's becoming more popular. So that sort of helps stop people sniffing the traffic as it's being delivered. That may not be a very common cause of data theft. The content protection itself takes all manners. So you can do things like DRM, of course. You can wrap the content and encrypt it so that you're having to hand out your licenses and you can track who that's being accessed by. You can look at watermarking techniques as well so that you've got some way to track the individual users who are accessing your content. And then straightforward things like using tokenization in your URLs. This stops people being able to distribute the URLs widely, so you know that you're not at risk of someone rebroadcasting your own stream. Simple things like cross-origin resource sharing. If you're a publisher and you're going out to multiple websites, you can be in control of how the browsers communicate with you, and you can control which sites are able to access your content. And all forms of sort of geographic targeting, CDN service providers like Limelight can help manage all of those request and response communications at the edge, away from your infrastructure. So as the request is coming in, to help manage, should this user come in now, and what should I do if they're not supposed to? So all of that conditional access management, you can control way out at the edge, away from your own infrastructure, so you can help yourself remove that complexity by managing it within the service provider close to the user. It creates a better, more low latency experience as well. And then the third piece, infrastructure, applications, and user data, perhaps most importantly. So, being able to protect yourself from large volumetric DDoS attacks, which will just stop your site being available. That is as damaging as anything else. That's one thing. So, using protective services from companies like Limelight will help keep that threat away from your actual infrastructure. And then looking at the requests and data that actually get to your infrastructure. So, you have to log in a subscription website. You have to log in, right? So you have to interact with that application. So using WAF tools, WAF services that will help protect your application from people trying to get in on ports they shouldn't, and also protect the data coming back out. Yeah. So people looking at your ports and scanning your ports for data coming out is another way that people will steal data about your users. So I really think these three areas, the applications and the data, the access to the content and the encryption themselves of the traffic, are really key to the whole security piece and need to be considered together.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Not at all, it's a pleasure.
So lots of really useful tips and best practices from Limelight Networks. You can find out more at limelight.com.